All right. Well, we were going to kick off on Monday. The off-season program is going to get started. We're really excited about that. We want to make sure I'm going to put everybody on mute for now. We'll have a time for Q&A here in just a little bit. But at the end today, if you we're going to have two different parts for question and answer. Once I finish the strength conditioning section, and then at the end, Pratik then is going to talk about nutrition. And then we're going to talk about what's coming up over the next 3 months, what topics we're going to be covering, what educational things we're going to be diving into. So this is going to be, I think, a very informative day. And we hope that this helps get everybody off to a really good start. So what I want to outline right now is kind of what's coming up from a training perspective and what you can expect, help you understand our thought process behind what we're doing. Then I'm going to show you how that's playing out in the program. Because I want you to, I think it's really important as an athlete or somebody that's looking to improve their physical skills, is that you understand the reasoning behind what we're doing. That creates more conviction and a better understanding of the process, and we really want you to understand the training process. So the first block, it's a 12-week program. The first 4 weeks is what we call general physical preparation. And I'll go into a bit more of that here in just a second. And then we're going to do a strength and power block, and then more conditioning intensive block. So the first block is what's called GPP, or general physical preparation. And the point of this is you're developing a very wide fitness base. And really, this could go on for a very, very long period of time, but it's going to improve general qualities like your cardiovascular fitness, muscular endurance, general strength. We're going to be doing a lot of things that aren't very specific to pickleball, but they build the foundation for all sorts of different movements. So everything from squatting, hinging, pressing, pulling, twisting, all foundational movement patterns. Um, One of the things that you're going to see is you're going to have a bit higher volume, which means that the repetitions are going to be a little bit higher. The intensity is a little bit lower, and that's on purpose because what we want to do is the first thing that really adapts is your muscle tissue, and it takes a little bit longer for tendons and ligaments to adapt. And so you're going to see how that plays out in the jumping protocols as well. This is a great time as we're to help do some injury prevention work. We're going to increase your general work capacity, which means how much overall work your body can tolerate. And we know as in pickleball, people play a lot and they're playing a lot of games, and tournaments can be an absolute beatdown. Like if you play singles, doubles, and mixed doubles, and you play a 3-day tournament, worst case scenario, you could be out there for 5 30-minute matches a day, and that is a lot. And that can open you up for significant injury. And that's why, pickleball itself is not an inherently dangerous sport, but a lot of people start getting into competitive and tournament play and they're just not quite prepared for it. In addition, some of the circuits that we're going to be doing, these AMRAP circuits, are going to help a little bit with some mental resilience. When we do these things, we want to make sure that you're really dialed into your technique and you're able to focus and concentrate when you're in a fatigued state. So the workout structure every time you work out is going to look like this. You're going to have a warm up, which is absolutely critical. Do not skip this. Pratik and I put a lot of time into developing these warm-ups. So I'm going to talk about kind of the four parts to these warm-ups in a second. They're going to improve your mobility. They're going to help you increase core body temperature. They're going to set the stage for a really great session. Then we're going to do a jump training session or power-based session, a power-based segment. We're going to be working on increasing your ability to produce force and power. Then we're going to have a strength section, and then we're going to have a work capacity section. Okay. So I'm going to break this down for you. The first part is the warm up, and we're going to be doing something called a neuromuscular warm up that includes a couple basic parts. One is heart rate elevation. So you're going to start by doing general movements to get your core body temperature up. Then we're going to be doing some mobility for your joints. As you age, A lot of people suffer from arthritis or their joints just take a long time to warm up. I'm 44. I can feel it already. And so this is something that I think is really important that we engage in. Also, your joints don't get direct blood flow. So the only way to get the joints to move through a complete range of motion uh, with less pain and to move more effectively is you actually have to push fluid or synovial fluid into the joint surface. And so the best way to do that is to move the joint through a complete range of motion. So we'll be doing that kind of joint by joint. Then we'll be doing some dynamic flexibility and some activation work. Warm-ups don't only just warm up the body, they also help improve your focus. So if you notice, like sometimes maybe you go into the gym or whatever, and everything's craziness has happened throughout the day, and you're like, all right, now I got to focus in. Doing a warm up kind of dials in your attention. It increases your balance, your mobility, and it also goes a long way in preventing injuries. You do not want to go into the gym and just start hitting the weights or jumping. That's a recipe for disaster. The next part of the training session, especially for block one, is we're going to introduce what are called low intensity or low amplitude jumps. Amplitude meaning the height of the jump. They're more like bouncing exercises. This is going to improve the elasticity of your ankle complex. It's going to improve your tendon and ligament resilience. There's a lot of calf and Achilles injuries in the game of pickleball. This is really going to help prevent those. Also, having fast feet is really important for this sport. And the way that you develop quick feet is number one, you can store and release energy, and you're almost kind of like a bouncy ball. Like if you drop a bouncy ball onto the ground, it bounces up really high. You drop a sandbag on the ground, the reason is a bouncy ball can store, absorb, and release energy very quickly. Everybody can do this, no matter what your age is. It's very safe. Then on Wednesday, we're going to be introducing something called depth drops. Depending on your age, this could be dropping off 4 to 6 inches of height, or you could be dropping off a little bit higher of an implement like a foot. But what you're going to be doing is you're just going to have your leg, there's videos of this, stepping off, dropping and landing and absorbing force. A lot of injuries occur because you can't absorb force and stop yourself. The number one injury in pickleball is fractures from falls. So this is a really important part of the training. It's going to improve your landing mechanics, and it's going to set the stage for other jump training that's going to be coming on down the line. We'll also do some box jumps in this section. This is just a counter movement, jump up onto a box. I want to say right now, when we do these, the box doesn't have to be very high. It could be a 6 or 12-inch box at the gym. It could be a plate or two that you're jumping up on. The key is we're trying to get you used to jumping and producing maximal force. So that's going to be the beginning of the workout right after you do your warm-up. Then we're going to go into a strength training part of the workout. It's very important just for general health and wellness that you be developing strength and using resistance training for the duration of your life. When it comes to sports, strength training helps you generate more force, which is absolutely critical for developing power. Power is force times velocity. It's how much force you can generate and how fast you can generate that force. Well, if you can't generate very much force, your power is going to be very low. Pickleball is more than just, it's a movement game and it's a striking game. If you want to generate more force and more velocity of the ball coming off the paddle head, it all starts with how much force you can generate through the ground. It's the same thing for pitchers. It's the same thing for golf swing. It all comes through ground reaction forces. So it's really important that we develop some general strength in our lower body and our upper body. Also, when you do strength training, it increases bone mineral density, which means your bones become stronger, which are going to prevent fractures. And it can also eliminate a lot of these muscle imbalances. And so when we talk about, I'm going to show you the session here in a minute, but you're going to see that Pratik and I have programmed in various tempos at which we're going to have you lift. It's not just going to be going there and just lifting as fast as you can. When we're doing strength training, there's a very specific tempo for very specific reasons. So it improves his force production, helps with power, injury prevention, bone mineralization, all that kind of stuff. And then when we talk about work capacity is absolutely critical because we want to improve the total amount of volume of work that you can handle. This includes pickleball, general exercise. It creates a robustness in your system. This will improve cardiovascular fitness, general muscular endurance. We're going to be doing this at the end through these little AMRAP sessions. And I'll show you what they look like in a minute, but it's basically we're going to start off with like a 6-minute block of like 5 or 6 exercises. And the idea is let's say it's like 5 push-ups, 5 squat. We'll see it here in just a second. But the idea is like execute these exercises with great form, move to the next one with great form, and the next one with great form. And over time, you want to see if you can get more circuits or more of these exercises done in a given period of time. So I'll walk you through that here in just a second. The last thing that we're going to be doing is some zone 2 exercise during this first block. And essentially, zone 2 training is what you might think of as like some people call it steady state aerobic exercise or steady state cardio. This is you've probably heard a lot about it in the recent like biohackers or Andrew Huberman talking about this. This is something that people have been doing for decades and decades and decades. There's nothing new about this. What's great about zone 2 aerobic exercises is it has an impact on your peripheral cardiovascular system and your central cardiovascular system. I'll explain what that means. Your central system is more like your heart, right? So zone 2 exercise is a low intensity exercise. It can be done at like a conversational pace. So which means that you're sweating, you're working out, but I could have a conversation with Pratik. I'm not gasping for breath. Okay. It's roughly 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. I'm going to put something in the community group about this. If you wear a wearable, it's very easy to track. If you don't have a wearable, essentially you can am I at a conversational pace? Why is this important? It increases something called cardiac output, or how much blood your heart can beat every single beat. So that left ventricle of your heart actually can fill up with more blood and eject more blood for every single beat. So your cardiovascular system becomes more efficient. Your cardiologist will love you for this one. Also, it increases something called mitochondrial density. If you remember from like high school biology, your mitochondria are the powerhouse of your cell. It creates something called ATP, which is the energy currency of the body. Zone 2 exercise helps generate and create more of these mitochondria in your muscle tissues. In addition, it increases something called capillary density. You're going to actually create more capillary networks, which deliver more oxygenated blood to your tissues. Anybody familiar with HRV, heart rate variability? You probably heard of that before. It's basically a measure of your autonomic nervous system and how much stress your body is under at rest. Zone 2 aerobic exercise help increase HRV, which is phenomenal for recovery, reducing all-cause mortality. And zone 2 is great for just general recovery. So I want you to be doing 1 day of zone 2 a week. I'll show you where we're going to put that in. So that's basically an outline for what these workouts are going to look like. So if we go to the calendar that I put in your guide, there's a couple rules of thumb we talked about. Number 1, don't increase your pickleball volume right now. So if you've been playing 3 days a week for 1 hour each session, just stick with that. Okay, because now what's about to happen is we're about to add on all this other exercise on top of it. What we don't want to do is burn you out or get you injured. Okay, so right now it's a great time to just kind of stabilize what you are doing. If you're somebody, I've already had some outreach about, okay, I'm gonna, I'm more of a tie on the calendar A where I can do 2 workouts a day. Which one do I do first? Um, I would recommend if you're doing pickleball and weightlifting back to back, do your pickleball first and your weightlifting second. Um, if you have several hours in between, if you have 3 to 4, even 5 hours, maybe you're gonna do one in the morning, one at night. It's totally up to you. I would probably do the skill stuff in the morning though, and then the weightlifting and conditioning in the afternoon because this is going to be new. It may cause a little bit more fatigue. Um, Make sure that before you play pickleball, you do a great warm up. You can use the Aim 7 app for that. Do not go out there and just play cold. And then um, we're using this thing called a high-low structure, which means that if you're doing 2 things on a day, we want to have one day that's a little bit harder and one day that's a little bit easier. So, like if you see here on calendar A on Monday, we got your strength conditioning and your pickleball, and then Tuesday is like zone 2, super easy, followed by a harder day, followed by an off day, followed by a harder day. So, we want to make sure that we kind of have this wave-like pattern. If you're only able to do one thing a day, except for I put in some extra zone 2 in here, then you're going to have to, you know, you're going to probably see kind of this wave-like pattern, and like the strength conditioning can be a bit harder. Try to back it off a little bit on the pickleball. What you don't want is every day to be a beat down on the body. That's a recipe for disaster. We do recommend that you have 2 off days a week for this first block. For the first 4 weeks, give yourself some extra time to recover. On those off days, go walking, get sun exposure. I know it's the winter time right now, but be active. Don't just sit on your rear end all day. But right now, because we're adding in all this new training, it's really, really helpful to give yourself at least 2 days off. If you can just only take one day, that's fine, but 2 days is probably more ideal. And I would recommend if you're taking 2 days off, you should never go more than 3 days in a row without a break. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to exit out of this. All right. And I'm going to go to My Coach AI. I'm going to share this with you. So can everybody see my screen now with My Coach AI on the screen?
Yep.
Awesome. So what you're going to see here is Monday. First of all, somebody wrote in and it was a great question. I see that you have these like photo pictures. We're not using that. Okay. If you give us permission to use that for promotion later, that's for you. I think it's really important. And Pratik, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you haven't been doing very much resistance training in the past and you all of a sudden start eating well, you can have some what's called body recomp take place where your weight may not change very much, but the composition of your body over 12 weeks is going to shift. You're going to lose some fat, you're going to gain some muscle. And so it's really good. Like sometimes the scale may not change the way you want it to, but the mirror is a great, that's ultimately you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, my waistline's trimming up. I have more defined arms. I think it's really important to take those pictures. Pratik, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, and it's completely up to you. It's not a requirement. Same thing with the weigh-ins, but sometimes we don't know what's changing unless we get a chance to monitor it. So that's really important with tracking your nutrition, taking some of these progress pics, because we see ourselves every single day in a mirror. We don't necessarily know that there are changes happening. And then maybe all of a sudden you haven't seen somebody in 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and they're blown away. They're like, oh my gosh, what have you been doing? You look so different. You're like, oh, really? And then if you are taking these pictures and you go back to week one and you look at yourself and then you're like, oh, let me look at the most recent ones. I have changed. I think for some people, it can become very empowering and show that, hey, what I've been doing, what I've invested in, my time, money, and effort has been working. And I want to continue to do that.
So I want to take y'all now to the workout plan. So this is the warm up. We have all the exercises written out here. Don't skip this. Okay. We're going to start with a heart rate elevation section. You have 2 options. you could do 5 to 7 minutes on any type of piece of equipment that you want. It could be an inclined treadmill, it could be an elliptical, just something to get your heart rate elevated. If you don't have that, here's a little circuit you could go through performing jumping jacks and some squats. And then here's the mobilization section. This right here is going to be, for many of you, after a couple weeks of doing this, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I feel like my body is becoming unglued. Um, we're doing arm circles and shoulder rotations, all these different things for the main joints, your shoulder, your elbow, your knees, your hips. They're going to be new at first. Watch the video. After a couple weeks, we're not going to change this very much. We're not going to make it so like every time you go in there, like, oh my gosh, I'm totally confused. This is going to give you an arsenal of different things that you can use to really help your body. Then we're going to go to some dynamic flexibility and what we call activation. We're going to do some balance exercises, some little bouncing drills, and all of this is right here. You can click on it. You can watch the video. It's all done for you. Now we're going to go to the workout. Oops, not warm up. Okay, so what you're going to start with, this is Monday of next week. This is your power section right here. These forward pogos, lateral pogos, and backwards pogos. It's just double leg bouncing exercises. The idea is to be very stiff and elastic and kind of be like a pogo stick going up and down, up and down. Very simple to do, but these are, I know they kind of look elementary, but some of the best athletes in the world use these types of little mini jumps. Pratik and I have used these with world-class athletes to build this elasticity. It's something that kids to adults should be doing. Then we'll be going on to our strength section. We'll be doing these superset exercises, a goblet squat with a seated leg curl. Now, I know there's one person in our group that's like, well, hey, Eric, I don't, I have a garage gym. I don't have a leg curl. Well, you can come over here. You can swap the exercise. If you don't see something you like, you can come in here and go, all right, I want to do a Romanian deadlift with kettlebells. Perfect. That's a hamstring dominant exercise that you could flop in. If you have a question about, hey, which one should I do? Go through and look through this in advance. Just send us a direct message in the circle group and we'll help you out with that. But you'll notice something on here. There's a tempo. Pratik, can you explain what this tempo means?
Yes, you'll see four numbers. Each one is indicative of how much time per in seconds you want to spend in that phase of the lift. So it always starts with your starting position. So if I'm holding a goblet squat, with a dumbbell right here against my chest, I'm going to squat down. It says three. So I'm going to squat down for 3 seconds, pause at the bottom for 1 second, bring myself up in 1 second. And then if you want to pause at the top, you can, or if you just want to pull yourself back down into it, you can. And same thing with a seated leg curl. So say I'm sitting, I'm at the machine, my legs are out in front of me. I want to take 1 second to curl both of my legs in, 2 seconds of a pause, 2 seconds of lengthening them back, and then I can pause at the end if I want to, or I can just bring it right back in. So that's going to be the cadence for every single movement. And when you get to the actual weightlifting portion of each of these workouts, you definitely want to click on it and record the number of reps and the weight that you do. So once you have it all recorded, you can make additional notes to say, hey, I was on the leg curl machine and the seat position was at this and the leg position was at this. Maybe it's 6 and then maybe it's 4. That way, when you do it again the next week, you can see your notes and what you've progressively written down. That way you're not putting yourself in a different position. And if you want to click on the actual seated leg curl, just right there. What you also want to do is after you've recorded it and you scroll all the way down underneath the additional notes section on the bottom, there's going to be a save button. So after you've recorded everything, hit save. And then as you go to the left side where it has 6 to 8 reps and it has a video of what to do, you can just hit that box and it check marks. So make sure that you don't just skip to the check mark and you don't put in the weight and the reps that you end up doing, because it won't save anything that you don't input in terms of, hey, I did this many reps and I did this much weight. That way, when you go to the next week and it's the same workout, full body 1, week 2, you can see this is what I did last week and this is how I want to progress. So it's going to be difficult to remember it. Look, Eric and I and a lot of you have done a lot of workouts over the years. I know it's easy in the moment to say like, oh, I know exactly what I did for that workout. And then 1 week passes, you're like, oh, what did I do? And it's a tale as old as time. So definitely make sure that you're recording the weights that you do. For the warm up part of it, I mean, there's no weight to record, so you don't really have to worry that much about it. You can just check those boxes as you continue to progress through the warm ups. But when it comes to the weightlifting part, definitely please make sure to record your reps and the weight that you do.
Hold on 1 second, fatigue. I would also mention here that, the first week, we're really accentuating what's called the eccentric part of the movement. So if you notice, like, you're lowering slowly, or when you do the hamstring curl, you're going back to the start slowly. Use a lighter weight than you think you should use. um, on like a scale of 1 to 10, I would say these weights should be around a 6. 10 is the heaviest thing you've ever lifted. Use a lighter weight. Make it lighter the first week. You're probably going to be a little bit sore. So dial it back less than you think you should do. We're going to be building this up over time. At the end, so you have so you do 2 exercises, a goblet squat, a seated leg curl, rest 2.5 minutes. Why? Oh my gosh, 2.5 minutes. That's an eternity. Well, if you actually want to develop strength, you have to give your body plenty of rest. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to develop a significant amount of strength. Research demonstrates you need at least 2 minutes of rest between these types of things. 2.5 minutes between supersets is ideal. There was actually an entire paper that was recently written on this. We'll be elongating these rest intervals, but you're going to get 4 great exercises done for strength. And then you'll finish with this little circuit here. It's going to be one. Why is this not clicking off? There we go. This AMRAP circuit, you're just going to do 6 minutes. You'll do 6 push-ups, 10 body weight calf raises. You can use weight if you want, 20-second plank, and 10 squats. And then you'll start over again. If you have to do a kneeling push-up, that's totally fine. If you can't do a kneeling push-up, you could do a dumbbell press. But the idea here is these are all body weight exercises. Want to do perfect repetitions. If you only get through 2 times, that's fine. But you should be pushing yourself. This is the time where you're going to want to be a little bit out of breath. You're going to, you're going to be like, okay, I'm breathing hard here. That's totally fine. These are body weight exercises, very minimal risk of injury. And every week we're going to be adding more time to this circuit. So this is the time to really kind of push it. So I'm going to stop here. Does anybody have any questions about this part so far? Anything on the strength side of things?
Hey, Eric, it's Krishan.
Hey.
Hey, Maggie. The question that I have is about the calendars, real quick. So let's say, the calendar right now is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I think pickleball is Monday, Wednesday type thing. If I tend to play Tuesday, Thursday, can I just shift these to the right? Same routine, if I look at more like day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can I, is that I just shift it, right? And stay in the same routine.
For sure. That is exactly what you should do, because we know that all of y'all have different schedules. And so it's basically just if you go in that manual, just the rules of thumb. Like if you're going to stack 2 things, you can kind of have this higher day, lower day, higher day, lower day. That's ideal. Yeah, you can just shift it over one day.
Last question.
Sure.
If I miss a day, do you pick up with whatever's on the next day, or do you pick up with what you missed the day prior? Or does it matter that much?
I would say right now, prioritize getting your strength sessions in. So, and ideally you don't do these on back-to-back days. So if you got sick or something and you only were able to get 2 in that week, just go on to the next week. But let's say you know, it was supposed to be, let's say you were supposed to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you ended up not being able to do it on Friday and you had to do it on Saturday, totally fine. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just at least one day between the weight sessions.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Phil, Saturday would be a rest day. Ideally you have 2 rest days a week. So if you want to do them back to back, totally fine. You could do back-to-back Saturday, Sunday rest days. My personal preference is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. Now, I know some people like maybe like your week is just slammed and you're like Saturday and Sunday are my best days to get to work. That's fine. You could start your calendar day on a Saturday. Just give yourself 2 days off a week, whatever your calendar structure, your 7-day structure would look like.
Yeah, calendar A looks like it has 3 rest days. Would you add something in for Saturday, or would you have 3 rest days theoretically?
You could have 3 rest days, or you could add some extra zone 2 in. It depends on your that's a pretty rigorous schedule there. If you're going double days, 3 days a week. Phil, in this case, like if you were able to actually do this and do it well, you could just DM me and I could say, hey, how is your body feeling? You could add an extra zone 2 session in there if you wanted to, if you're feeling great. If you're going to add an extra day of pickleball, you could do that. I would just be very cognizant, especially this first couple weeks, to just kind of feel yourself out. You can go play pickleball and you can do stuff that's at the net and it's more, hand skills and isn't as aggressive on the body. You could play, you could just do some games at the net. You can do some shoot at home. I just dink with my son all the time. You know what I'm saying? There's some things you could do, like, I want to work on some skills or whatever. But I would just say, yeah, you could make that Saturday off, but just err on the side of like a little bit less the first couple weeks to see how your body responds to this. Justin, it should be in my Coach AI. Let's see. Has it not been added into your?
They'll be loaded today, so you'll be able to go to the next week and see, because everything will start on Monday.
Okay.
On the 6th. And then if you need to adjust when a specific lifting day is, feel free to do that. I put that into the video with the tutorial. Just, make sure that if you move something that's initially scheduled on Monday, so full body 1, week 1 is scheduled on Monday, you're like, hey, I want to do that on Tuesday. Move the warm up with it too, and also the cool down, because warm up A and cool down A will correspond to day 1. Warm up B, cool down B will correspond to lifting day 2, and then warm up A, we go back to warm up A, cool down A will correspond to day 3. So if you end up moving something, you make sure all you do is make sure you move the warm up and the cool down with it.
Wait to do the weight exercises yes. LC, please do the weight exercises in the order that they're listed. So warm up, power, strength, work capacity. The last thing you'd want to do is like do your work capacity stuff first, and then you're not very fresh for the power jumping stuff. So certain things like jumps and power training are more intensive what's called the central nervous system. And that's a central nervous system driven activity. You don't want to do those things in a fatigued state. So the order that you should construct a workout is warm up, any type of power, speed, agility, strength, and then work capacity at the end. I think you're muted. I can unmute you here. Let's see. You can just take yourself off mute if you want to, Elsie.
I understand that. I was talking about the actual strength exercises inside of each of the activities. For example, I share a gym, so I can't always get on the machine to do this. Can I do the other one in there before, instead of just sitting around waiting for the machine to be available?
Yeah, if you wanted to do like your upper body work before your lower body work, that'd be totally fine. If you had to do, yeah, totally get that. I understand what you're saying now. Yeah. We do share gyms. That's right. And it's good to be a good partner in the gym. You don't want to be that guy. It's like, hey, I need to use that now.
Right.
So yeah, totally. And if you need to swap an exercise, just go like if you're like, I don't have a seated curl, but I have a lying leg curl. Totally cool. Swap it out. Or if you're like, hey, it's supposed to be a chest press. I don't have that, but I have a dumbbell press. Totally cool. Or I want to do bench press instead. It's a press. So that's kind of the autonomy that you have here is
Yeah.
that like you're like, man, I like the bench press. Great. Knock yourself out. You know what I'm saying? If you can stay closer to some of these unilateral exercises, or if you're like, hey, I've been squatting for years with a barbell, can I go ahead and do barbell squats instead of goblet squats? Totally fine. Um, Everybody's on a different part of your journey. And so that's where like, hey, if you need to DM us and ask us a question, please do that.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a great question. My Coach AI is a web page. No, it's both, Maggie. You can if you when you go into the manual, there's actually a way to make it it is a web-based app to your point, but you can actually make it an icon on your iPhone or Android app. So you can pull it up on your iPhone anytime or Android you want. You click on it, kind of comes up. But yes, it's a web-based solution. All right. All right, we're going to move on to the nutrition section. If any other questions pop up on the strength conditioning side, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Pratik, you can let's see. Just I'll let me do this. Can y'all see that now?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Okay, so I think getting a chance to explain this is going to be very helpful because what we want to do is we don't want to just educate you. We want to empower you to be able to feel very comfortable about making nutrition choices. And nutrition is going to be very different for every single person. So the more you can learn about what it is that you need, how it's going to help support your health and performance journey and your goals, that's something that's very, very important. And Eric and I have dealt with athletes of all ages for decades, and this is sometimes one of the biggest missing pieces. And there's a lot of noise out there when it comes to nutrition, a lot of misinformation. But what we want to do is we want to come at it from a perspective of you guys have performance and health goals. You guys are athletes at different stages along your journey. And what we want to do is provide you with the information for you to be able to craft your nutrition solutions to help you stay healthy, play at a very high level, and recover like an athlete. So it doesn't mean you have to do it, or feel like you're an elite athlete if that's not necessarily what you want to do. But if you like to play competitively, you want to take your game to the next level, this is something that can provide a huge amount of value. So with our initial talk here today, we'll just go over the general macronutrients. So there were three: carbohydrates, protein, and fats. So protein, in terms of an athlete's needs, it's very important because it's the number one thing for muscle building and repair. When we consume protein, we want to do it as often as possible, consistently throughout the entire day. When we train, we break down muscle tissue. When we eat protein and resistance train, we stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So you're constantly in need of building up all the different muscle, all the different tissue within your body. And being able to increase strength is highly dependent upon, the quality of the stimulus you get from training and how much stock and effort you put into recovery. Nutrition is a big part of that. Now, carbohydrates are important because they are high intensity energy and they also help facilitate recovery. So as an athlete, when you are training, especially within the demands of pickleball, and now with, the training program that we're putting you guys through, there is going to be a heavy reliance on muscle glycogen. When we eat carbohydrates, they store in the muscle, they store in the liver. If we end up eating way too many because we're in this massive caloric surplus, that's when, the weight gain starts and that's when the fat gain starts. But in an athlete's context, we're not overly concerned about that unless it's something that goes off the rails. So when you do train, you are utilizing these stored forms of carbohydrate and glycogen from the muscle, and you deplete energy. So what we want to do is we always want to make sure that we're replenishing what we just did. So two questions I always have all of the athletes that I work with think about and make sure that they are ready to answer is, what did I just do from a training or competitive perspective that I have to recover from? And the second is, what do I have upcoming that I have to be ready for? So as an athlete that's going through this off-season program, we're asking you to make sure your calendar is appropriately full with the appropriate amount of training. So as you know, like, hey, there are going to be days where I might be doing two things. I might be doing a lift, and then I'm going to do pickleball. I have a day off, then I have zone 2, and then I have a lift, and then I have a day off. So it's this constant circle of I'm doing something, I need to recover, I'm preparing, I got to get ready for something. So making sure that you are eating in and around the right times is going to be helpful for that. And then last macronutrient is going to be fat. Fat's just going to be very important for low intensity energy when you're not training at rest. That's what the body's preferred energy source is going to be. Fat is very essential for nutrient absorption, hormone production, a variety of different things. So all three are important. I know a lot of times in this day and age, certain things get scapegoated, but unless you have a diagnosed physical condition from an MD saying you have to do this, you have to do that, a third, we can make sure that we are eating the right sources to get these macronutrients. And it's going to be a huge benefit when it comes to helping you continue to perform or recover the way that you want to. So we'll start with protein. Protein provides 4 calories per gram. It is the building block for muscle and tissue. And I'll just break it down into 2 different types. You have animal proteins, and then you have plant-based proteins. Now, animal proteins are generally ideal because they have what we call the full complement of the 9 essential amino acids. These are all of the amino acids that the body can't make that we have to get from food. When we do consume all of these 9 essential amino acids, we can make all of the other amino acids that the body needs. But we have to make sure that we're eating them. And animal proteins get more of the limelight because per serving, they are called high quality proteins because they contain all 9 of the essential amino acids. So you don't have to mix and match different types of food or protein sources to get all 9 of those. Now, there's nothing wrong with eating plant-based sources, but generally plant-based sources are a little bit lower per serving size than in terms of the 9 essential amino acids. So you might have to combine different types of things. You might have to do rice and beans. You might have to do tofu plus lentils to be able to get the same amount of protein as you would in a smaller quantity of animals. But the combination of both of animal proteins and plant-based proteins is going to be very powerful. It just depends on your own preference. So protein-rich foods include various types of meats, game meats, eggs, especially egg whites. Egg whites actually have a lot more of the protein than the yolks do, but the yolk does have a good amount of nutrition. We're talking poultry, chicken, turkey, pork, fish, seafood. I know, Phil, you asked about sardines as a snack source, which it actually is a very, very good snack choice. Not very common with most people, but if you're like, hey, I need a protein source as a snack, sardines are phenomenal and they provide a high amount of omega-3s, EPA and DHA. Dairy, especially from things like Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, or if you're really into like the probiotic type yogurts or kefir, very great sources. If you need something quick and easy, and it's something we'll talk about at the end of this when we go over supplements, whey protein powder is very helpful, and I consider it more of actually a nutrition product because it is derived from whey. It's just a little bit more processed. Now, again, not to say that you can't have plant-based sources because, they can be eaten and consumed, especially if you eat the appropriate amount and get the enough protein to be able to stimulate muscle protein synthesis to build muscle. So really good sources of those will be tofu, beans, lentils, legumes, plant-based protein powders if you're not somebody who's really big into whey or dairy, tempeh, soy. So again, eating a wide variety is going to be beneficial, but making sure that generally leaner if you are going for the animal sources. That way we're not just getting all of our calories from really high fatty protein sources. And moving on to carbohydrates, just like protein, it provides 4 calories per gram. We can break them down into sugars, starches, and fibers. So the combination of all of them are actually going to be beneficial. Now, a lot of people, again, they have misconceptions about, oh, I can't eat carbohydrates, it's going to lead to fat gain. It's not this, it's not that. It's the quantity and the quality that you end up choosing. So we want to make sure that when it comes to providing you with quick energy, we have these simple or quicker digesting options, which seem to be a little bit more beneficial in and around training, because again, you don't have to wait for them to digest as slowly as something like a complex carbohydrate would end up doing. So they come in a variety of different sources. They're found in grains, vegetables, beans, dairy products, food, added sweeteners. And the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about what happens when we do consume them. So anything you eat from a carbohydrate standpoint does end up getting broken down into glucose. Everybody talks about it as sugar, but the quality and the type will elicit a different response in the body. So eating table sugar is going to provide a different response than just having honey, versus fruit, which has a little bit more fiber and antioxidants, versus eating, white rice versus potatoes. So the goal is just what seems to work well for me. What does my body respond positively to? And how much should I be eating at certain times? And obviously, carbohydrates are probably going to be the macronutrient you might end up eating the most of, especially if you're on the performance track, because again, you have high workloads, you're expending a lot of energy. Protein has a tightly regulated range of how much you would want to try to eat. Same thing with fat. But for most athletes, most people that are training really intensely, you're going to be manipulating carbohydrates the most. So there was a really good question about, can you, explain a little bit more about the quick digesting carbs versus the complex carbs? And what I meant by that is, I'll talk about that on the next slide. My recommendation for most athletes are, if you are trying to consume something and you're somebody who exercises early in the morning, you might not want to have something that's going to take a lot of time to digest, or you're like, hey, I'm an hour out from my training session. I probably don't want to sit and just have this gigantic meal. So that's when, quicker digesting carbs might be a little bit more ideal or beneficial, but everybody's different with what they can tolerate, depending on what they've been doing for a really long time. So if you found something that works for you and you're good about being consistent with it, by all means, stick with it. Our goal is just to make you more aware of how much should I be eating at certain times to help facilitate having a lot of energy for training. What should I be eating afterwards to recover, to continue to progress and, keep you healthy, but build muscle, have more success on the court, continue to stay durable. So quick and easy things that I like to recommend and have for a very long time, fruit, dried fruit, honey, maple syrup, a little bit of bread, maybe a little bit of granola bar, a bar. Specific sports nutrition products, they have a lot of different powders, the carbohydrate gummies, the gels. That's when my recommendation for consuming those things would generally be around training, whether it's before training or during training. Outside of that, I'm not going to recommend you, eat a carbohydrate gummy at a mealtime, because then you want to stick with more of those complex carbohydrates at your meal times, whether it's, pasta, rice, potatoes, quinoa, whatever your preference is around those times. And that's in the next slide too. So not to say that you can't eat rice before a training session. If you've got an iron stomach like myself, eating a half a cup of rice an hour before a training session probably would end up being not too bad. But personal preference is always going to rule, and accessibility to certain products is always going to be at the forefront of, should I be doing this or not?
So Pratik, if I'm hearing you correctly, before and after your training is the ideal time to eat this stuff.
Yeah. No, but not to say you can't have like potatoes after a training session, or rice after a training session, or, oats before, like as a breakfast before you head into the gym. It's just like, you might want to test some certain things out. And really, I'm not going to advocate for you to take a bunch of these energy chews at dinner time.
Yeah, I got you. Let's talk about fat.
And yeah, finishing it out with fat, you've got 4 different types of fat, the monounsaturated, the polyunsaturated, saturated, and trans, and it all just is dependent upon their chemical composition and the bonds that they have. Ultimately, the goal to be a healthy person is finding this right balance between the monounsaturated fatty acids and the polyunsaturated fatty acids. Trans fats, we don't really want to consume. Saturated is kind of up in the air, but if you have a genetic history, a family history of heart disease and cardiovascular disease, then, going off the rails and eating steak, 4 or 5 times a day might not necessarily be the greatest thing for you. And just being a little bit more on top of that is probably ideal. Now in this day and age, we're hearing a lot more about these seed oils, these overly processed oils. Should I stay away from them? And from my perspective is, I'm not really going to advocate the consumption of them, because I think there are healthier options that can just check the box of, if I'm cooking and I need a really good quality oil, like extra virgin olive oil is the one that's been studied to provide the greatest health benefits for anybody at any age. But again, it's not just eating only olive oil. Like, you can eat fats from eggs, you can eat fats from dairy and animal products, you can have it from nuts and seeds and avocados. It's having a wide, nice, diverse consumption of all the different types of fats, which is going to be ideal when it does come up in blood work. So again, ideal sources, we're talking about oils, extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, and hopefully it's from reputable companies that actually have, it's nothing but 100% extra virgin olive oil or avocado oil, and they're not cutting with cheaper oils, which unfortunately It does happen quite a bit. You know, people are taking the initiative to do the right thing and eat the healthier option when they might actually be getting something that's not listed on the label. Sparingly, you can use coconut oil, MCT oil. It provides quick energy. It's good for cognitive function, but I wouldn't, overdo and make that the priority in terms of oils. Spreads, again, every now and then, nothing wrong with a little bit of butter, a little bit of ghee. Nut butters are great, but they can add a good amount of calories really easy. If you're like me and a big fan of peanut butter, different types of nut butter, you can easily overdo it, and you gotta put the jar away and say, okay, I'm gonna live for another day. In terms of food sources, avocados are great. Certain types of cheeses, especially the lighter cheeses or the harder cheeses, the aged cheeses. Dark chocolate is a phenomenal source of fat, definitely has a high amount of antioxidants, especially as you get higher in the percentages of cocoa, generally around 80% or greater if you're a fan and you can stomach that. Egg yolks have a good amount of nutrition. And then, plain nuts and seeds from a variety of different sources, as long as, they're not roasted and they have a lot of sugar and a lot of salt and a lot of other stuff added to them, which can increase the calories and actually decrease the health status of it. We do find fats and meats and fatty fish. And Phil, you asked about sardines. It's a really great source of omega-3 fatty acids too.
Yeah, it's actually, I found out at Costco recently, they have like wild caught sardines in a can. They're stinking amazing. Now my youngest son, who's 4 years old, calls it fish chicken. And he loves some sardines. If you put lemon on it too. Anyways, I've become a sardine fan recently, and I'm always trying to increase my HDL. So there you go.
Yeah. So now we'll just transition into supplements. And again, our main goal with providing information on supplements is just more so advocating about what's been studied, like with a robust amount of literature. What do we know that has worked for people of a variety of different populations, and how can we end up taking these things? When we don't want to sit here and spend 30 minutes talking about 50 different supplements, but knowing a lot about the game of pickleball, the energy demands, what happens with recurring injuries, or the most common injuries that Eric mentioned, the fractures are the number one thing. I'm like, what we want to do is provide you with the supplementation that can provide a huge amount of benefit. And when we look at supplements, you can look at it as two different lenses. One is it something that's going to help my physical performance, maybe delay fatigue, help with improving body composition, help me get stronger? And another is with supplements, is it helping me fix or correct a deficiency because I'm not getting enough from the diet, or I might be predisposed based on my, genetic and family heritage, that I might actually need something because maybe getting it through food just isn't enough. And I think the good news about everything we're going to talk about here in these two slides is they both overlap. So one is just a standard multivitamin. Now, if you know that you're a person that you don't eat as consistently as you would want to, a wide variety of things, when I put together the booklet, Eric and we have the checklist of what should you be eating at your meal times. You always want to make sure that you're checking off the boxes of each one of these different things. Quality protein source, something with fiber, whether it's fruit and or vegetable, complex carbohydrate, and make sure that we've got a quality fat that goes along with it. If you're like, hey, I probably only get vegetables once a day or fruit once a day, and I know that I've gone to my doctor or I've done blood tests on my own and I might be low on certain things, then a multivitamin is something that can provide assistance if your diet isn't varied or blood work shows like, hey, you might have a deficiency of a couple different things. Next is magnesium. Magnesium is an essential micronutrient. It's an essential mineral. So we actually have to get it through the diet. Unfortunately, the way that our agriculture processes have happened, the way that the soil has evolved over the course of the past 100 years, back then we used to get more than enough micronutrients from the soil. Now it's been depleted quite significantly. So blood work that's shown up on a variety of different people, not only people that I've trained and Eric has trained, but it's been shown in athletes that have been studied and either the general population, has shown that over 50% of the population is deficient in magnesium. And if you do extensive blood work and you look at something like an RBC mag, I've never come across a single person that has been in the ideal range of what I consider really good for health and performance. So magnesium is important for thousands of reactions. Some people 100, but it's actually thousands of reactions as a coenzyme and cofactor for energy production, glucose control, muscle function and activation. It's a sleep aid. It has a positive effect on the nervous system. It's involved in bone strength and bone formation. It's involved in blood pressure regulation. And to me, it's one of those things where I supplement with it. It's one of the things that I recommend to everybody. So with the Thorne account, we've got available for you guys. My recommendation is anywhere from 200 to 500 milligrams of supplementation over the course of the entire day. Moving on to creatine. Creatine's been studied probably more than any other substance on the planet in terms of a supplement and an ergogenic aid. Years ago, we would only think about creatine as, the bodybuilding gym bros taking it because they wanted to put on more muscle mass. They wanted to knock out more reps in the gym. But as time has evolved, more studies have been done to show that creatine is kind of this perfect silver bullet for a variety of different things. It not only can help you with improving your physical performance, increasing strength, improving endurance and stamina, increasing power, but also with work capacity. It helps improve body composition, so putting on more muscle mass, improving bone mineral density, bone mineral formation, at the tune of 9 to 10 grams per day, but also helping with fat loss. The creatine does get stored in the brain, so it is something that can very much help with brain and cognitive health, especially as we age. And if we're not eating as well as we get older, once we hit 40, 50, 60 years old, the desire to eat a ton of meat might not necessarily be there. So supplementation is definitely one.
I just did a podcast on a paper that just came out showing positive benefits for chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah.
16 grams a day. Wild stuff. There's not an FDA approved medication for chronic fatigue because it's kind of like where nobody really understands the full extent of why people get this. But it's very interesting, all the different data coming out for even like Alzheimer's disease. And so I'm recommending it to everybody. It's everybody. And as a matter of fact, Pratik, I just wrote down, can you drop into the discussion section that tweet you did that got, or X post that got 1 million views? He did this amazing post on creatine that went viral because he basically put all the literature out on it. So could you drop that in later?
Yeah, I definitely can do that.
Okay.
All
We got
right.
2 more.
Collagen. So collagen has definitely got a lot of buzz recently, and some people aren't convinced, but I've been using collagen, and gelatin's kind of like a form of collagen, which has a very similar amino acid profile with not only athletes, but myself with over a decade. And the reason is collagen in itself as the protein is the most abundant structural protein in the body. And as we age, or we do certain things, or we have natural inflammation in the body or excessive inflammation, it does impact collagen synthesis. So collagen isn't just needed for hair and skin and nails. It's needed for our tissues. It's needed for muscles. It's needed for fascia. It's needed for joints. It's needed for bone health. And the amino acid composition of collagen is very different than what you're going to get from a whey protein powder or from eating even high quality meats, because it has 3 things that are very much necessary and integral for collagen synthesis in terms of that amino acid profile. So you could take something like the Bubs collagen, which is a great product. You can drink a ton of bone broth, but that becomes super expensive too. But collagen consumption, I'm a huge advocate, 10 to 20 grams per day, for not just for athletes, but for anybody. If I can get my parents on this, then I would love it. But, old Indian parents are very stubborn, so it's going to be difficult to convince them. But simple rule of thumb is, 10 to 20 grams prior to any kind of intense training, which is going to force you to move your body through a wide variety of movements, working all the major muscle groups and joints. And what you also want to do is make sure that you have vitamin C along with it, because vitamin C does help with its absorption. So taking it by itself in your coffee, that's good, but you also want to make sure that, something as small as, like half a cup of orange juice, or I do mine with some sweet peppers, because sweet peppers are pretty high on vitamin C. You have citrus fruits, you've got berries, strawberries that have a good amount of vitamin C, potatoes, leafy greens. So it's kind of up to you how you want to do that, but it's something that, again, I would say magnesium, creatine, collagen, whey protein, I would recommend to anybody without having any prior knowledge of blood work, or I don't even know what you do for training, but I'm going to recommend these things to you because they're going to work. Which segues into whey protein, which again, it's the fastest digesting protein source. It's the one that has the highest thermic effect of food compared to any other protein source. It's quick and easy in and around training. It helps with muscle building and repair. So again, I consider it a nutrition product, because it's like, oh, do I want to eat a cup of Greek yogurt? Do I want to eat a cup of cottage cheese? Or can I just eat, 1 scoop of whey protein to get very similar benefits in terms of the protein content? So it's just a great option to have as a convenience. So you can use it in and around training, or you can kind of have it as a snack if you're like, hey, I'm in a jam, I'm putting together this snack. I've got, this great fat source. I've got a great carbohydrate source. I need protein. I don't have anything in the refrigerator. Oh, cool. I've got, the Thorne whey protein on hand. So it kind of just checks that box.
I want to be cognizant of the time. We're going to open this up for Q&A here, but I want to first ask you a question that Phil submitted a little while ago. First of all, Phil wins the award for the most detailed participant so far. He has sent me a lot of things, Phil. We really appreciate your attention to detail. And he found a couple errors in the manual, which I really appreciate. That was a monster to put together. He didn't see lettuce or salad listed as a vegetable. Pratik, is that acceptable?
Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't want to have 8 pages of like, hey, these are all the vegetables that, we could list out. And obviously that is an important one. And I'm a big fan of salad and big fan of lettuce. So if you want to use that as your vegetable option of choice, then absolutely go for it.
The other question, the most common question I got from folks was, hey, I want to get better at pickleball, right? I want to get better on the performance side, the physical side, but I also kind of want to lose a couple pounds. My suggestion was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Pratik, but most of us probably aren't eating at a caloric maintenance level. If you add all sorts of, unless you're like, I'm here to lose weight, which is totally fine, start with the weight loss. But if all of a sudden now you add a bunch of physical training and what do you think? Should they start on the performance side or start on the weight loss side?
Yeah, I would say, the first couple weeks are going to be indicative of, are you kind of falling in line with what your goals are, more so from a physical perspective. Remember when we talked about Tanner's transformation, where, he came to us, he's like, this is what I've been doing for training. This is what I've been doing for eating. We did the calculations and I'm like, based on your training volume, how often you're training and how many days, and your goal to not only maintain your weight, but put on muscle mass, because he's just a really lean guy, like you definitely need to eat more. And it took him, a couple weeks to get adjusted to it. And he's like, man, I haven't felt like this in a really long time. It makes sense. Initially anything you do that's different or you haven't had experience with is going to take some time. So we're not expecting you to figure all of this out automatically, but that's why we're here to help coach you through this process. So as you're going along within the first couple of weeks, if things aren't moving in the direction, maybe from like a weight perspective that you were thinking about, then we could easily, help you out. We could recalibrate that and just make sure that we're pushing you on the right track.
But if you're here and you're like, hey, I want to lose 10 to 20 pounds, start on the weight loss side of things. I would just go right to that. And it's very simply laid out. But I want to open it up to questions now. Anybody got any questions for us?
This is Krishan.
Hey.
You gave us some milligrams per day for collagen and magnesium. Anything regarding creatine and the whey protein?
Yeah, good question. General recommendations for creatine will be anywhere from 3 to 5 grams per day, and you don't have to load it. So creatine will saturate after 2 to 3 weeks in the same phase of if you loaded for 20 grams a day for 7 days. And that's kind of a hassle for a lot of people. It's remembering to do it and having to drink plenty of water. For whey protein, it's kind of up to you. I wouldn't recommend using whey protein as your sole protein source. Some people are like, I'm just going to take 3 shakes per day. I'm not going to eat any, eggs or ground turkey or beef or fish or whatever it is. I think if you're going to use whey protein, my general recommendation is just use it as one standalone snack or one protein choice selection. So anywhere from 25 to 50 grams per day max.
And then,
yeah, I had a couple.
go ahead.
Oh, Krishan, go ahead and finish. Sorry
Sorry about that. And then again, we talked about the magnesium, taking that throughout the day, and then collagen pre-training. In terms of going back to the creatine and the whey protein, whey protein was pre, post, or snack. So creatine, is that just any time during the day or pre or post?
Yeah, the research goes back and forth, and it's not overly conclusive with saying taking it before training is better or taking it after training is better. I like recommending it after training because it's kind of like, hey, you're done with training. It's kind of put together as part of your recovery process because then it's going to start loading into the muscle to be ready for the next day. If you have a day where you're not doing any training at all, you can take it, you know, first thing in the morning with breakfast. And it kind of, for some people, it kind of acts as a nootropic, you know, because it does help with cognitive function, and you are going to be drinking plenty of water with it. So it has that positive benefit like that on non-training days.
And then just a quick follow-up. Do you have somewhere in our literature, is there anything that gives us examples of where we can get creatine source of supply?
Yes. So you should have gotten an invite. I will go double check from Thorne. So what we did is we have a practitioner account with Thorne, and we got you all a really ridiculous discount, 25% off anything you ever want to get out of there. So I will double check that you got an invite. You may want to check your spam or inbox it for an invite from THORNE, and you can get that there. Also in the circle group, there's we have a whole bunch of in the general circle group, there's a list of all the different partners that we have and discount codes for anything you guys could ever want. We try to go out and create partnerships with people that we believe could bring a benefit to everybody, but I will double check to make sure that that stuff's in there.
I did see the discount codes, just so you know that. I just didn't know what. So I would just go to Thorne and search creatine and find a product. Is that kind of what you're saying there? Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I think in the booklet, if you go to the booklet and you go down to like the bottom, yep, I actually put links to all the products in there.
Yeah, I see it. So that's where I saw it. So whatever it says, okay, there it goes. All right, I see it now. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. And Maggie, we can Pratik, if you can drop in those recommendations for dosages in the discussion channel, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll do that along with the long thread.
Yeah. Sorry, I know somebody else was going to ask a question.
Oh yeah, this is Phil. I had DM'd you a couple questions, but I figured maybe other people might be interested in the answers. The first question was about getting on the AIM-7 app. So I got on everything else, but I didn't see any instructions on that one in the manual. And then the second question was about wearables. So I'm kind of a newbie to the wearables thing, and so I was just wondering if you could give us some guidance on what metrics we should be focused on tracking, and what wearables you guys would recommend for this that would work well for this program to track those metrics.
Yeah, so here's what I'll do. For the AIM-7 thing, I thought I had emailed everybody a code and a link to sign up, but I will put that a code and everything in the Slack channel, or the Circle community. It's basically a code you'll use. Go to our website, sign up, and we give you a free membership. For wearables, it really depends on what you're wearing it for. So like, if I think an Apple Watch end to end is really good for tracking your matches. It does a good job of tracking how long you sleep, really good for heart rate. It's the best wrist worn wearable when it comes to measuring heart rate. The Whoop is not as accurate. Actually, I'll drop this in our chat right now. We have if you Google accuracy of wearables, AIM-7 is like #1 in Google right now. It was very hard to do this. We're above the New York Times and the National Institute of Health as the #1 reference on this subject. And I'll drop that into the chat here, and then into the Slack group or the Circle group. On our AIM-7 app, if you want to measure your heart rate variability, that's a measure of like how much stress your body's under. You can put your finger over the camera lens. There's a way to do that in the app. If you don't like to track yourself during matches, an Oura Ring is a really great wearable for tracking sleep. I would not look at the REM sleep and deep sleep. It's an added headache. Just look at how long you sleep. And then it also has a great heart rate variability metric, which is an indicator of how stressed your body is. But AIM-7 has a readiness score that we bring in all of your wearable data, Plus we take you through this daily questionnaire of how sore are you, your mood, your energy, your sleep, your stress, et cetera. And then we give you this readiness rating. And so, if you want to, and the next meeting, we'll talk about this, how to use that. You can use that rating to increase or decrease how hard you work that day. That's called a fluid or a flexible way of regulating, because not every day you're 100%, right? And just because, you're like, oh, I'm supposed to go play pickleball for 90 minutes today, but you feel like garbage, that's typically like, it's okay to dial it down, because your body, if you're constantly trying to slam a square peg through a round hole, and your body is not able to adapt to that stress, and you consistently do that over time, that's how you get sick or injured. So what we want to make sure is that we're pairing the right amount of stress with the right amount of rest. So I think the Apple Watch is a great holistic device. If you're really interested in, heart rate variability, you could wear an Oura Ring. But I think Apple Watch gives you a ton of data that you can use from an exercise session, from tracking your pickleball matches. It's just probably the best. That or Garmin. Garmin's really good too. I just think Garmin's are a bit more expensive from what I know. You can get an Apple Watch SE for like $175. The Garmin's are typically a bit pricier. Does that answer your question, Phil? Can't hear you. I think you're muted. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, yep, it answers my question.
Okay, awesome.
Hey, Eric, this is Justin.
Hey, Justin.
Hey, I'm not sure if it was in the booklet or if it's in the AIM7 app where you're talking about like during like fueling and eating during training, mostly carbs and that stuff. Just wondering if those are, do you count those towards your overall daily calories and macros, or is that kind of separate?
Pratik.
Yeah, I would count those towards your overall daily calories and macros. Another thing to think about too is while we're going through this first block, something short like the duration of the lifting workouts, you could get away with your pre-training nutrition and then something afterwards. But if you're going from pickleball to a lift or a lift to pickleball or doing something the same day and it's longer than an hour, so maybe your pickleball sessions just happen to be 90 minutes, potentially 2 hours, if that's what you're used to, then consuming a small amount of carbohydrate, 30 to 60 grams per hour, generally tops is going to be more than enough to be able to help you just keep energy levels up, keep glucose levels up the way that you would want them to during those training sessions. And again, it doesn't have to be anything special. It could be a banana, it could be a sports drink like Gatorade or Powerade, it could be tablespoon of honey, it could be a variety of different types of fruits or dried fruit. But I wouldn't consume it unless it's a really intense training session and it's lasting a lot longer than an hour.
And what I wanted to tell y'all, because we're a little bit over here, over the next, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 6 of these left, or 5 of these left. We're going to be talking about hydration. We're going to be talking about fueling during tournaments. We're going to be talking about next week. In 2 weeks, on January 17th is our next call. I'm going to be talking about sleep. Pratik is going to be talking about pre-training nutrition on February 7th, and I'll put all this in there. We're going to talk about hydration, tournament nutrition. We're going to talk about recovery nutrition. We're going to have Dr. Alex Arbach, sports psychologist, is going to come on and do 3 different sessions on different mental skills. So we're going to be kind of breaking these things down into chunks because it's a lot, right? The goal is to like get you all started, to get y'all off to a fast start, to know that you're supported and that you can message us. But we're going to be delivering specific educational sessions over the next 3 months geared towards all these different topics and really kind of ramping up the tournaments pieces as we get into March.
Hey, I got a
Hey.
quick question. It's
Yeah,
Chris.
Christopher.
So I just signed up last week and it's been kind of a crazy time with the holidays and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think I'm a little bit behind on everybody. I got all the emails. I haven't read them all. So I think I missed something in terms of you guys have been talking about booklets and stuff. I just downloaded the app. So I have the AIM 7 app. And then, so is there some emails that I need to be
Yeah, I'll
opening up
resurface
and-
that. I'll resurface those to you. So there's a manual that you can download. I'll resend that email to you. There's also an email in there about how to access the Circle community, where everything is located. So I will email that to you when we get off the call.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm a little behind. It sounds
Yeah,
like
no worries.
than everybody else.
Hey, Eric, I just have one more thing. And it may be, I have not gone through the entire booklet.
Uh-huh.
But I pulled that up, and then I've also got the off-season nutrition plan that has all the formulas and weight, all that. Should we be, and it may be in the booklet, should I go in there and go ahead and put my weight in, my age in, and let those calculations happen and then try to figure out what it means?
Yeah, so the Pratik's got videos on all of this, but yes, you'll go in, you'll put your age, your weight, and they'll give you your macros, your
Right.
carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And then actually inside in your My Coach AI app is where you can track all of that.
Okay. And those videos are probably in the manual?
Yeah, there's a video, you just
Okay.
click on the video and it'll pull up Pratik or myself.
Perfect.
You got it. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this one. I'm going to put here later today. I will put this up in the Circle community. Chris, I'll email you within the next half hour. Resend all that stuff to you. The slide deck, and the video will be in the Circle community for your reference. So all that'll be up there, and then I'll go ahead and get the next meeting scheduled by this weekend. Okay.
Thank you.
And then our workouts will be in the Coach AI app later today.
Yes.
So, okay. Awesome.
All right. Well, we're excited and really appreciate everybody, and looking forward to your success. We'll be talking soon.